to Staffordshire University, to our guests, to our staff and also to our expert panel. I'm Sarah Tudor, I'm the Director of Employer Partnerships at Staffordshire University, and welcome to those of you who are joining on the live stream too. This event is taking place on International Women's Day as part of National Apprenticeship Week, and it's a perfect opportunity to highlight the value of apprenticeships, and particularly apprenticeships for women and in STEM subjects too. We're looking at apprenticeships and their impact on social mobility and how they create opportunities for women to really achieve their potential. I'm pleased if you could use the hashtag NAW2018 if you're tweeting at the event, and also hashtag IWD2018. I'm really pleased to be joined by an inspirational women's panel. We're joined by Dr. Jo Horn. Jo is an advanced practitioner healthcare scientist at the University Hospital NHS Foundation Trust. She specialises in histological dissection and reporting, and in 2017 Jo was awarded the Chief Scientific Officer's WISE Fellowship and was appointed as lead healthcare scientist for the Trust. Jo's passionate about supporting apprenticeship outreach events and women in STEM outreach events, inspiring children, but especially girls, to consider STEM careers. So welcome, Jo. We're also joined by Sian Court. Sian is a first-year Digital Technology Solutions degree apprentice. She's currently working in IT at Siemens in Congleton, and she's also studying a degree apprenticeship at Staffordshire University. Sian's keen in encouraging women to consider STEM subjects and especially computing. And we're delighted to have an apprentice with us today, so welcome, Sian. Next on our expert panel is Jenny Conlon. Jenny's the training manager for KMF Precision Sheet Metal, one of the UK's leading sheet fabrication metal precision engineering firms. Jenny's absolutely passionate about apprenticeships in STEM subjects, and she's chair of the West Midlands Apprenticeship Ambassador Network. She organises ambassadorial activities and supports businesses to develop their apprenticeship schemes. In 2016, Jenny was awarded the Apprenticeship Manufacturer's Top 100 Driver for Cultural Change. So welcome, Jenny. We're also joined by Professor Liz Barnes, Vice-Chancellor and Chief Executive of Staffordshire University. Liz has been the Vice-Chancellor at Staffordshire University since April 2016 and has led the university to become a leading provider of higher and degree apprenticeships and to have strong relationships across the UK with businesses. Liz is committed to education and to young people and is co-chair of the Stoke-on-Trent Opportunity Area Partnership Board. Liz believes it's important that education and employers are seen to join together to improve the life chances of young people. We're also joined by Sue Husband. Sue is Director of the National Apprenticeship Service, and we're delighted that you can join us today. I know it's a busy week for the National Apprenticeship Service. And the National Apprenticeship Service is an executive agency of the Department for Education. Sue's responsible for the Apprenticeship Service and also the National Careers Service, which is incredibly important, particularly to be recognised in a week like this. Apprenticeships and skills have been a real passion of Sue's since her love of learning was cemented at school and in work. She's currently studying herself for a Chartered Manager degree apprenticeship, so another apprentice on the panel, and Sue's studying with the Open University, so welcome, Sue. And finally, we're joined by Rebecca Rhodes, Senior Associate at the University Vocational Awards Council. And until 2016, Rebecca was Head of Apprenticeship Policy at the Skills Funding Agency, where she led the team responsible for apprenticeship policy reform. Rebecca plays a key role in supporting universities to deliver apprenticeship policy and practice in higher and degree apprenticeships, and she's been a real great supporter and friend of Staffordshire University, so welcome, Rebecca. So thank you for joining us both in the studio and live. And before we get started, I want to ask you a question to have a bit of participation for yourselves. I'm really interested in what you know about apprenticeships and what you might know about Staffordshire University's apprentices and how apprenticeships might support young people from disadvantaged backgrounds to access learning. I'd like to see your hands. Those of you who think that apprentices from Staffordshire University, fewer than 20% of them come from the most disadvantaged backgrounds. If you think it's fewer than 20% come from the most disadvantaged backgrounds, just raise your hand. Okay. Nobody? Oh, one person. Okay, good. If you think between 20 and 40% of Staffordshire University's apprentices come from the most disadvantaged backgrounds, you raise your hand. Good, so a few more there. And if you think between 40 and 50% come from the most disadvantaged background, that seems to be the most popular one. I think there are a few uninformed people in the room. And any more than 50% come from the most disadvantaged background. Okay, good. Well, we're delighted at Staffordshire University that 44% of our apprentices come from the most disadvantaged backgrounds. And that's really important to us. And on that note, I want to ask Sue and start off with Liz. How do we make sure that apprenticeships are attractive to ensure that all groups have access to higher level skills?
I think the key thing is getting the message out that apprenticeships doesn't mean you're not going to university. There seems to be a message out there that it's an alternative. Actually, by following an apprenticeship route, students can still come to university, but it's a great opportunity to earn while you learn, to be working and spend time both within the workplace and within the university. And I don't think that's really understood. And that doesn't mean that they have to come fresh at 18. They can start apprenticeships at 16 and still progress through at 18, having gone into the workplace at 16 into a degree, or can come through much later. At any point in the career, people can pick up an opportunity through an apprenticeship with the university.
Yeah, and I actually think they are attractive. So I think that people are starting to realise that, particularly because they can see their opportunity to get a degree that's debt-free, to get into employment on day one, join an organisation that they can see a clear career path with. I think the challenge really is just making sure more people are aware of that. So the ones that are, absolutely, they find it attractive. I think the best way to do that is to use apprentices. We've seen that a lot this week, where we've used apprentices at every event that we've had during National Apprenticeship Week, and them sharing their stories is really inspiring to other young people. I think as well, we have to make sure that those apprentices that we use to share their stories are from a diverse background, so people can see someone like them, they can really connect. And also there's a challenge with parents still. Lots of parents are telling us that they can see that apprenticeships have changed, they can see that they're really good, but perhaps not for their child. So we have more work to do to help parents really understand that this is a great way to not just start a career, but really develop, get a degree, and really get on. So there's still more to do to sort of share how great they are.
Absolutely. I think the other panel want to, Sian, I don't know whether from your perspective, how did your parents feel when you decided on an apprenticeship?
Well, my parents don't really know what an apprenticeship is. I'm quite self-motivated, and I sort of drove myself into this career route because I'd previously done an apprenticeship at a doctor's surgery, and then I went on to work in a hospital, and from there I got this job at Siemens Congleton doing an IT degree apprenticeship. So when I told my mum and dad, they were like, well, what is one? So I explained to them, so they are really proud of me because I'm the first person in my family to go to university, because everyone else just left school. At 16 I went and got a job and just worked the whole life, whereas I am working and learning at the same time. It's brilliant because you're getting paid to go to uni and to work.
What can we do to improve awareness? We've talked about parents. Is there anything else that we can do?
I think we should start at a really young age, actually, and that applies specifically to STEM as well. We should be in schools with children from primary school age through, and get them used to the idea that there are different routes into work and into university, and make them feel comfortable, confident and familiar with the opportunities out there, and then involve parents as well and employers. And so that is where the collaborative working comes in, I think.
And then I'm sure Jenny will have something to say, because I know KMF are an example of the wonderful organisations that we work with that actually already do quite a lot with schools to really inspire individuals.
Absolutely. I mean, 6 years now we've been running a very, very successful school engagement project with high schools across Stoke-on-Trent and Staffordshire. And in fact, early this morning I was having a conversation with the Design and Technology Association in terms of trying to engage with more primary schools. So we already do some engagement with primary schools, but we want to be able to open that out to a few more, because quite rightly you do need to start a lot younger. And if you sort of start to work with the younger sort of primary school age pupils, they're the ones that will go home and say, Mum, Dad, this is what I've been doing, this is what I've been getting involved with, this is what I've made, this is the company that I'm working with.
Unfortunately, when you get to sort of the more teenager years, they're less likely to go home and say, oh, look, this is what I've been doing, which can, comes with its own frustrations. But quite rightly, primary school is absolutely the right age to start trying to engage and talk to them about STEM and opportunities and where your career pathways can potentially take you.
One of the things I was going to raise was the importance of the skill show,
Mm.
and actually for parents actually seeing what an apprenticeship actually is like and going to the skill show and feeling the buzz in the whole of the NEC, which is just packed with hordes and hordes of young people. And I sat on a university stand at the last show in November last year, and we were inundated from the moment we kind of arrived in the morning until the end of the day by girls. I was 80–90% of people that were coming to the stand were female, from every kind of background that you could think of, and I should think 80% of them were interested in STEM, either in digital or in engineering, and they were coming with their parents because their parents are seeing all these other people like them and like their kids really encouraged, and all the fun things that take place at the skills show. It's a fantastic showcase, and we need more at the weekend, I think, on that, because by Saturday the competitions are kind of coming to an end and we don't have quite the level of activity from the industries that we need. But I think more at the weekend, more for parents to see and feel, I think would be really helpful.
Again, agreed. If we actually ran a showcase on Saturday, albeit a couple of years ago, and it was just a very simple have a go opportunity, utilising some of our engineering techniques, and our stand was absolutely inundated, swamped with parents and pupils and children, what have you, saying, oh, what's all this about? Touching and feeling the metalwork that we work with, and that's something that then they'll take back, they'll remember, and then go and start to research and get involved in whatever they want, in terms of those different STEM career pathways.
Sorry, Jane.
I think for us it's really important to have these careers events. So I work in an NHS environment, and we have a careers morning every year for STEM, and people come and they want to touch and they want to feel. They don't want to just look at leaflets, they want to engage, and actually that's how we connect in the best way with children.
Does anyone in the audience have a question or want to ask the panel anything? Okay. I think just picking up from that, and we've talked about parents. What do you think employers might be able to do? The kinds of, how can employers learn from what KMF are doing in relation to and what the NHS are doing? How can we get to parents through employers almost?
They have to provide work experience opportunities, and certainly for me that's changed since I was at school, where we had a 2-week work experience which was provided, and now it's difficult. I go into a local school, I talk to the careers advisor, and she can't place any of her students, so they're not getting that kind of visibility, and I think it's so important for employers to actually provide that and put the effort into doing that, because that's how you capture those people.
Can I follow on from this point? I was a work experience student at Siemens about 5 years ago, and I did 1 week work experience, stayed for a second week, and then from that I did an 8-week, all the summer holidays placement, and I was being paid for it, and that really drove me and made me interested in Siemens and in IT. So from there, 5 years later on, I've come back and I've got the opportunity to now be an IT degree apprentice. So work experience is key for other young people out there, and I definitely recommend that for future careers.
Again, echo all that. We do work experience programmes. We probably have 4 or 5 pupils every week coming to us, because again, it is difficult in engineering to have young people, but we've identified that that's what we need to do. In fact, we've even got a gold award for work experience. But on the same token, on the other side of the coin, should I say, not every school allows work experience programmes in terms of the cost, in terms of the insurance. So that's something else that we've started to look at and work with the schools, in so much that, okay, if the school doesn't offer that work experience programme, those pupils can actually come to us during the half-term holidays. Because we have got that insurance to be able to cope and look after these 14, 15-year-olds. So that's something else that employees could potentially look at.
I think we've got to help employers as well, because many of our employers at the moment don't understand the way apprenticeships can work for them, and don't understand how they can use the levy or get involved with writing new standards. And so the university has a key role there to be that broker and help build apprenticeships with employers locally.
I mean, I think agree with everything that's been said. I guess generally, you know, employers talk quite a lot about skills gaps that they experience and not being able to get talented people into their organisation. So the really smart ones are ahead of the curve already, and they're already doing work experience, they're already doing apprenticeships and giving young people opportunities, going into schools where they can't offer a work experience, actually just going in and talking to pupils. So I think for all employers out there, the skills challenges are going to increase for all sorts of reasons. So the more they can connect up now with young people, create really good career paths, let young people come and experience their workplaces, the better position they'll be in the future as those skills gaps get more and more challenging to fill.
What about the types of organisations that are offering apprenticeships? I'm just thinking, Rebecca, the types of people that you're talking to, because there's a whole range of providers, and universities are there now offering that opportunity. How have you seen that grow over?
Oh, it's been a massive growth, as you know. Started really, really small, started out in 2014 and has kind of grown ever since. And it is really, really good news. And I think there are some barriers that universities have to overcome with employers who would not normally associate themselves with working with the university. They don't see that as being where their skills gaps would be met, or they don't have an existing relationship. So, you know, universities like STASU, and I know employers are at the core of what you do, getting out there, talking to employers, helping them understand in a way that makes sense to them is absolutely critical part of the message. And I think that is quite a challenge for HE, who aren't always necessarily totally employer-centric, and because that will be a challenge for regulations and all the things that everybody needs to go through. But employers just need to understand in simple language. They need to see the real benefits of that. And for a small employer, you know, with or without the levy, there's really good funding there. So for a small employer to have a, you know, a degree level apprentice at the kind of 10% investment is really, really good news, and it's a unique opportunity to move their business forward. So I think it's an excellent opportunity, but you know, there's still work to do, and there's still space in the marketplace too.
Absolutely. I want to chip into that debate. I think from trying to help employers to understand how they can access an apprenticeship and how valuable it is. And I know we've got some of Sean's colleagues from Siemens in the audience, and it's great that Siemens have taken the opportunity to really grow their own staff and really invest in their own people. And we've got lots of employers who've done some great work this week during National Apprenticeship Week, and I think it's really helping to try and help those employers to understand how they can use either their levy or their 10% investment to the best of their ability.
Another point, sorry. Another point might be about the breadth of the sectors.
Absolutely, yes.
Because at the moment there still seems to be a feeling that apprenticeships applied to particular industries are associated maybe with the engineering and with the sort of hairdressing and that sort of area. But actually you can be studying healthcare, we're developing standards around sport. It just crosses most sectors. Logistics, I was celebrating their standard being approved recently. It just goes right across, and I think we need to get that message out there as well.
Yeah, and I was just going to say about the help that we've got, because there are large organisations like Siemens who are sort of at the forefront of this. There are also lots of organisations that are just medium size, or the small ones like Rebecca's saying about, that need a bit more support. So the apprenticeship service is there to help. So that's the first thing the message I'd want to get out there. But also we have wonderful people like Jenny, who are ambassadors for us, who are experienced in the world of apprenticeships themselves and are willing to speak with other employers, to give them a guiding hand, to give them all the sort of advice and all of the, you know, bits that they've had to learn over the way. And also we have our Young Ambassadors Network, and they love going into the boardroom and actually speaking to board members about how the apprenticeship has affected them, and that's usually the bit that wins boards over and makes them think we need somebody like Sean in our organisation.
And the Chamber of Commerce are playing a really important role as well, as bringing SMEs together so that they can share apprentices across if they can't afford an apprentice on their own.
I was going to add also that when I'm talking to employers, it is surprising how many employers still do not realise the sheer size of the programme. And I've sat, and I've got one of the things I do with my employees, I've got a quiz, and you know, one of the questions is how many apprentices do you think there are that start every year? And I've listened to so many organisations say, well, it can't, I have a choice between 50,000 and 500,000. They all think, 50, well, that's quite a lot. It can't be that many. And of course, it is 500,000 starts a year. It's a massive programme with really, really massive scope. So I think keeping on with that message is really key, because employers need to see employers like themselves as well working with the programme. That's one of the really
Yeah.
important parts of the message.
But also not to forget that places like Germany have sort of 5-6
Yes.
times
Yes,
as many
yes,
apprentices
indeed.
per
We begin
1,000
small,
people in the
yes.
workplace. So we've got some way to go.
Absolutely. And I think it's trying to bust some of those myths as well, isn't it? You know, apprenticeships are associated with maybe traditional trades, or apprenticeships are associated with low pay or poor quality, and that is absolutely not the case. And I think with this testament to the apprenticeship experience we've got on the panel today, that shows the value, the quality, the breadth and depth. Thinking about the offer in the NHS, Jo, you know, it's very broad, isn't it?
Yeah, and you get paid a percentage which increments as you train of what you would if you came in through a traditional university route. So there's no difference in pay, really.
I think we are seeing that the pay differential is around the recognition that you are training. And when you reach full competence, then you will be paid the same rate as if you'd gone in with that degree having gone through university.
But actually, one of the things, if you go to university sort of part-time in a traditional way, then you don't always get granted the study leave to actually, so it's quite challenging. So if you go the apprenticeship route, you get a 20% study leave, and it's guaranteed. So it's actually of huge benefit to the person training.
On that point, actually, I'm really interested, Sean and Sue, in what it's like to be an apprentice, and how do you manage the study and work elements of it? What's the experience like?
My best friend is Outlook. I manage my time in my Outlook calendar, so typically in the morning that's when I do all my work. So I'm mostly on service desk at Siemens Congleton, so I take all the phone calls for any issues in IT within the factory, be it shop floor or in the offices. So that takes up a lot of the morning, because that's when people log on, they find that the computer won't start. So then they call us. But then in the afternoon, that's when I sort of designate my time to catching up with lectures, doing any of my assignments, and catching up with any of the guys in my department that can help me grow and learn, because we're not on site at uni all the time, so we are mostly in the workplace, and we have so many great minds in my department that can help me grow. So it's excellent. So in the morning, get my work done, in the afternoon, focus on my uni.
That's a really good way to balance your time.
Outlook.
Yeah, great. And Sue, how are you finding the apprenticeship?
Yeah, it's been quite a long time since I learned, so you know, getting back into learning has been difficult. A lot of self-discipline. There's been highs and lows, you know, and lots of late night sort of study, because I'm doing it with the Open University, so it's very much about motivation and organising my time. The good thing, I think, is that there are several other people in the organisation and across the department who are also doing the same degree. So there's a sort of a little cohort of us that kind of egg each other on. And there's nothing more motivating than knowing somebody in your team is getting better marks than you. And I've got some real swats in my team. But, you know, and so that helps me. And also just connecting with the wider apprentices across the department and just seeing the impact on them. I think I have to set a good example. I'm pleased to say I got my last assignment scores back 2 days ago, and I got 85%, which is brilliant. Didn't do so well on the last one, so I knew I had to put a bit more effort in. But yeah, it's challenging, but I'm really pleased I'm doing it. It's really helping me to be better at what I do. So I've learnt on the job most of my life, and obviously that's what an apprenticeship is predominantly about. But just understanding some of the theory behind things, the reasons why we should do things a particular way, is really helping me to be, you know, much better at what I do.
I think from the perspective of the universities and the providers, we really are working hard to try and understand how apprentices will manage their time, so that we can make sure that we tailor the provision, tailor our teaching to work best for you. You know, I think that is a real shift between perhaps what may be viewed as a more traditional coming to the university for a block of study, or coming to the university 4 days a week and having 1 day on the job. It is different. That's right. I'm just going to pause for a second and just ask if there are any questions. I can just see somebody with their hand up at the back. Won't be 1 second. I'll come to you. So the question was, how can we look at the perception that apprenticeships are being hoovered up, I think the expression was, by the white middle classes? How can we change the perception, particularly given what we know about Staffordshire University's diverse apprenticeship background? I think whether anybody wants to start us off on that one. Thank you.
So, yeah, I think quite simply it's, I'd go back to the role models, you know, to start with, but there is a danger that those who've already got lots of choices simply just have more choices. And because they tend to be better informed, they might have people giving them that advice, that they're going to be first to be able to see these opportunities. So I think the key thing here is getting those role models out, talking to young people and making sure that everybody does know that these opportunities exist. And then the next thing is helping them where help's needed. I was at the BBC on Monday morning, and they have a fantastic scheme to help people from disadvantaged backgrounds, where they're basically just going out into the communities and they are working with those individuals to get them ready simply just to think about applying. Then they help them to apply. They do workshops with them and just get them ready to be in a place where they can at least compete alongside those individuals who've had that bit of a head start. So I think that's important.
I think the other thing is, though, to put a positive spin on why there might be that perception. The good thing is that there's also been an encouragement for 18-year-olds who are really high performers to go into apprenticeships, and basically apprenticeships are for everybody. And that's the important message to get across, I think. And we also, as we said, the different organisations, they can be the really big, well-known organisations. Rolls-Royce has a big apprenticeship scheme, is attracting high-performing 18-year-olds. But we want apprentices right across the piece. And so it's positive that we've got all types of apprentices joining the scheme, and that's the key message.
I'd like to strike up for the older learner, because I know there is obviously a real challenge that we want to make sure young people get all the best choice they have, but there are also older people in the workforce. There are women returners that are coming back into work, having had, you know, kind of time off with the children, who are perfect for an apprenticeship because it's a staged, managed learning programme. So it's, you know, it ought to be a lower risk route and an easier choice to make. And I think that there's a lot of, I feel there's a lot of criticism of the fact this older programme, because I know the stats are even more so now. But that's a perfect opportunity for people, and we should not lose that point. For an employer, a young person is a different thing there. May be perceived as slightly bigger risk, but a slightly older person who's been in work before actually is a perfect employee for lots of employers. So we want to make sure that everybody, all ages, sees an apprentice as just being a piece of learning, because there is a barrier that, again, talking about the types of sectors, there's an age thing that apprenticeship means you don't know anything. And it doesn't mean that at all, it just means that you're learning your occupation, and that shouldn't be the same whether you're 18 or whether you're kind of 48 for that matter. So I think we've got to manage that publicity and try and manage that noise and encourage everybody of all ages to see it as being an opportunity.
And I think from an employer's point of view, and especially an employer who is a levy-paying employer, I think they don't have that appreciation or understanding that they can actually use the levy to train their adults, so adult apprenticeship programmes. So we run adult apprenticeship programmes, and they're so successful. We're sort of inundated, you know, when's the next programme going to start? And they tend to be, you know, in the age range of sort of 35 to 50. Maybe, you know, haven't had the success at high school that they have these days. And, you know, they are going back to basics. They are having to do English and maths. And it's a real challenge for them. However, when they sort of come out of the programme and they come out of the apprenticeship, it's a great kind of feel-good factor for them.
Massive
And that's what they're sort of going back out into the factory environments and saying, look what I've achieved.
And of course a benefit for the workplace.
Absolutely.
In terms of how they've developed and what they bring back into practice.
So it is.
Do you know one of the other benefits I really love about apprenticeships, though we see a lot, is when there's people who are in the workforce who perhaps are coming near in retirement. You know, when you have an ageing workforce, which many industries have now, and they're able to pass their skills on. And it's a really nice side impact of apprenticeships, is people are really enjoying being a mentor, bringing somebody through the organisation and passing their skills on.
Thank you. I've got another question from the audience.
I'm really interested in the student experience and the comments that you've made already about the balancing act of the apprenticeship student experience. I'm really interested in how universities can respond to ensuring that it's a really rich student apprenticeship experience, so looking at the extracurricular and how that can be offered in different and interesting ways to make sure that it is that full student experience.
found when I come from our block release week here, that we could go to the student lounge and we could join students' union, we could do anything that a typical university student could do. Just because we're not on site all the time, we could come, we can use the library facilities, we can go and have a drink and a meal like every other student. We've got a student card, we can go shopping in Newark or wherever you want to, like every other student. So it's great, but I'm being paid to do it at the same time.
I think it's important to note as well that apprentices are not that different to a lot of our population at Staffordshire University. In total, across our courses, 66% of our students live at home. We offer lots of flexible opportunities for learning. We've got accelerated degrees, we've got foundation degrees, we've got distance learning. And we're constantly having conversations about how our students support and how the activities need to evolve to meet the differing needs of students, recognising that they all have very different requirements for getting the most out of university. And the Students' Union are playing a big part in that as well now. They're asking about what they need to do for apprentices, recognising that it's becoming a growing part of our offer.
Thank you. Any other questions from the audience before? Oh, let's just wait for the microphone. Thank you.
About support for employers with non-traditional apprenticeships. For instance, the healthcare courses that have a 50-50 split, which actually means they're losing their employee for half the time, and how we support and encourage them to actually take those students forward, because we have lots of students who want to do the apprenticeship route, lots of those more mature adults, shall we say, but actually the employers have got this concept that actually an apprentice is 80-20, but actually you're expecting me to do 50-50 with these. But it's not us, it's a professional requirement, and how we might handle that.
Just checking out whether we could hear that on the yeah, okay, thank you.
So I think I always start with finding somebody who's experiencing something like you. This is my starting point always, because whilst with the National Apprenticeship Service, we'd never profess to have all of the answers for all employers. Our biggest positive thing that we have to offer is connecting up employers that are in similar situations. I think it's really interesting that we're starting to see a rise in apprenticeships in roles that actually, if you think about what an apprenticeship is, and it's about learning on the job, there are so many jobs like nursing where you think, of course, that's the best way to become a nurse. You want people who are naturally good with people, that they know all of the things that a nurse is going to have to do. They don't have this idealised, idea, and it's not about theory really. There's obviously a lot of academic stuff you have to understand and know, but it's about doing the job. So what I would do, and I can help with this, is connect you up with other people who are experiencing the same challenges and how they've worked with that to get the best solution so that it is practical to employ these individuals and get them through all of that training while still holding down essentially what's a real job.
I think what we also have to do is get employers to share their experiences of having apprentices, because when I've been to apprenticeship awards, what's always really pleased me about this particular route through is that employers talk about the added value that apprentices bring, that they think about different solutions, different ways of working, they bring efficiencies to the business, more productivity, and therefore whilst they're learning on the job, they actually add more value probably than when you take brand new recruits in who have to start learning and hit the ground running, and it's much more difficult than it is for an apprentice who's just living and breathing it all of the time.
So I want to say something slightly contentious about professional bodies, because I think that in the apprenticeship world, it's been a fantastic major kind of facet of the reform to have professional bodies around the table, working with employers and coming up with the new standards that obviously we're all delivering now. However, I think professional bodies have not been in this world, and in some way other people haven't, and I think there is a real need for the professional bodies to think about what an apprenticeship really is and to come up with a way of managing things that is manageable for the apprentice, for the employer, and in fact for the poor old providers trying to cope with systems that won't flex. I've been somewhere this morning, we're talking about having to have one portfolio for the professional body and another one for the university to track what it has to do. Now that's clearly bonkers, so I think it's incumbent on everybody in the system to come up with a way of maintaining quality, maintaining the learning, the skills of the individual, but in a way that is manageable and supportive. So I think that everybody in the reform programme has to think that through, not just to provide and the employers, it has to be professional bodies too.
From an employer's perspective, Joe and Jenny, is there anything you wanted to add in terms of how we can support employers to understand apprenticeships more, not just the value, but how they actually work in practice?
I think we have to use examples of where we've had those kinds of things in place before, and to just show that it works. Because if you're starting from scratch, it is quite scary to work out how you're going to manage that. So I think, you know, nursing has been a big area where we've already had apprenticeships, where I am, and I think we just have to sort of follow that pathway. We've just got our first apprentice in healthcare science in pathology, and so for my department, it's not in my department, but I'll certainly be looking to them to see how it's working and how we manage it. And again, it's about working with the local provider as well.
I think from my perspective, as the chair of the West Midlands Apprenticeship Ambassador Network, we're a group of employers across the West Midlands region who can share that best practice, and one of our roles as ambassadors is to engage with new employers across the region in terms of being able to talk to them about some of their issues that they need to overcome, and maybe we can, as Sue has said, work together to try and overcome some of those things. And obviously talk about some of the success stories that we've had and how other organisations have been able to deal with some of the issues again. So, like I said, we are there as a network to share all of the information that comes down from the National Apprentice Service, because I know as an employer some of it can be a bit of a mind, you know, too much information sometimes, a bit of a information overload. And obviously we work together as a group to disseminate some of that and try and get down to what exactly do I need to do as an employer, if I'm a small employer, SME, or a large employer, levy paying. So yeah, we sort of work together in terms of that.
I think there's a really strong message there around the Apprenticeship Ambassadors Network, and really connecting employers into the West Midlands Ambassador Network or the Regional Ambassador Network to try and find some like-minded employers who've had that experience. And I do think it is a challenge around the differentials, particularly in healthcare and nursing, and the difference in time. But I think going into it with their eyes open and insight from others who've had that experience is helpful. So thank you. That's really good. Any other questions at all at the moment? Any burning questions? We've got somebody just down at the front. Oh, there's one at the back and then there's one down the front. So we'll go.
So talking widening participation, can you talk to me about disability in apprenticeships? A young family member of mine has lost a lot of time in education through disability, and she knows, she's at high school, she knows that she wants to do an apprenticeship. Looking at it as a good route into employment. So would you agree that it's a good avenue for anybody with disability?
Good. Thank you. Thank you for that question. It's a really important one. Sue, would you like to?
Yeah. So I would start by, I'll put you in touch with our Apprenticeship Diversity Champions Network. So we had an event yesterday and there's some fantastic employers that are taking part. It's an expanding group and they're just looking at widening participation generally. So whether it's people from a BAME background, or getting more women into STEM, or people with learning difficulties or physical disabilities. And it's a really, as I say, a great group of employers who are really enlightened. They realise that by widening the pool of talent that they sort of bring into their organisation, they'll be richer for it. So I'll be happy to catch up with you later and put you in touch with a few people.
And on that note, Staffordshire University is a member of the Apprenticeships Diversity Network, and recognised our contributor is in the room today. So we are delighted to have signed up and been recognised for our commitment to diversity in apprenticeships. That's great. Does anybody else want to add anything to that question? I think that absolutely, no matter what your background or abilities, you have absolutely the same access to apprenticeships, and we would definitely say talk to National Apprenticeship Service, talk to colleagues at the university, and also to the regional training providers and FE providers. There will be something out there that we can help support your family member to find the right apprenticeship. So thank you. Great. I think we've got one more question down at the front. Oh, is it the same question? Excellent, that's good. So does that answer the question for you? Thank you, that's really great. Thank you very much. I think I'd like to let's think a little bit more about STEM, and starting to think about STEM and apprenticeship, science, technology, engineering, maths, absolutely critical to UK's productivity challenge, and apprenticeships, as Sue mentioned earlier, are going to be key to help us fill some of those skills gaps. Really interested, particularly from Jenny's perspective as an employer in STEM, and from Joe's perspective, but also Sian's from being an apprentice in the STEM industry. Why are apprenticeships so suitable for STEM-based occupations?
Well, I think just to take one step back from that, I think in terms of STEM and STEM in schools particularly, the whole idea of running STEM projects is to sort of give the young people an idea of what STEM is, because I think STEM in young people's mind is about science and maths. They don't really understand the technology and the engineering bit. So some of the projects that we particularly run just opens their eyes up to what engineering actually is, and then the bolt-on of technology, and oh look, we can add science to it, we can add maths to it, and that kind of, you know, cumulates that sort of that program altogether. And then what that does is it then sort of opens their eyes up to, oh, well, you know, all of the career pathways that are available in STEM, because sometimes there can be, oh, well, I can only go in that one route. Well, actually, no, it opens the doors up to a whole range of different opportunities. So again, I mean, the projects that we've been engaging with, in terms of, we talked about boys and girls and different opportunities. And I think we've noticed more so in the last couple of years, more girls want to get involved in these STEM projects, which in the past it's always been a very male-driven in terms of engineering particularly. And I think one of the jobs that I've been working quite hard on is sort of going to these young girls and saying, actually, you know, engineering is, you know, more of a, I hate to use the word, but people do, sexy role to get into. You know, it's not the sort of dirty, kind of noisy environment that it is portrayed as. So STEM is hugely important.
Joe or Sian, do you want to?
Yeah, I can follow on from that. I mean, personally, I left school 5 years ago and I didn't know what a STEM subject was. I do now. I know it's your maths, your English, your science, your IT, your technology. And we run a challenge at Siemens called the Roller Coaster Challenge. So we go into schools in the local area and we promote STEM subjects, and the kids build a roller coaster, and it includes your science, your maths, your IT. So just by doing that with the kids, and I said to the girls, come on girls, it is a subject area to consider. And at the end we did a vote with the kids, and they said, I think 8 out of 10 of the girls in the class wanted to become an engineer or consider a STEM subject, so it was really good.
I mean, as well as physically going into schools, which is so important, taking things in that people can touch and feel, you get a lot of engagement. I went to an event at a school just a few weeks ago, and most people think if you want to go into healthcare, you go in as a doctor or a nurse. They don't know you can go in as a scientist. They don't know the range of careers. There's about 39 different areas in healthcare science you can go into. And I stand there and I see girls in the audience saying, that's exactly what I want to do. I didn't know I could do that, and it's amazing. One of the other things is the use of social media. I'm quite a big tweeter, and it's a really good way of reaching younger people especially. And I recently curated the NHS Twitter account for a week, and the amount of engagement was incredible from young people not quite knowing what they wanted to do, not knowing about the opportunities, but also from parents. So I think, you know, there are the physical ways of doing it, but there are also the more modern, if you like, ways of doing it.
There was just to sort of drop in a little task that I've just remembered, a gentleman on our network, when he goes into schools, he'll put a £10 note on the table and say, anybody can have that £10 note as long as you can tell me anything in the whole world that hasn't got engineering involved in it. And to this day, 10 years on, no one's took that £10 off him.
It is a really good point, and I think you know, young people and people already in the workforce, I think they don't realise the breadth of engineering. And I think on that point, in relation to STEM, but also in relation to the breadth of particularly higher in degrees apprenticeship subjects that are available. Rebecca, don't know whether you want to, you could share with us about the breadth of opportunities that are available out there. You know, this is, it's growing daily almost, isn't
absolutely. Yes, but I was talking to the Institute for Apprenticeships yesterday, and they've just cleared another 18 standards. So there's more and more occupation. That's been one of the real plus points of the new apprenticeship programme. I don't think employers and parents really know how much work has been done to turn the apprenticeship programme on its head and to put employers in the the lead of all of this, to develop things for occupations. And I was going to make exactly this point really, that certainly what's coming through, and the good thing about the new apprenticeships, they're clearly about an occupation. So they are about a role, and actually we need to promote much more about that and about the breadth of opportunity. And there is everything from every, really, really niche, really specialist bits of science-related roles in health and in engineering and in digital, all the way through to, you wouldn't even consider maybe had a STEM background in other sectors, even totally outside of engineering, in retail, things like that, where you have design elements to that, where you need to have, it's a good base for a STEM career. And there is more and more apprenticeships coming through all the time, so all the time new standards are being approved. And like as we were saying earlier, employers getting together and they're deciding where they think they've got a gap, where they've got a job role that's really key, and they're working up and developing an apprenticeship for that. And I think we don't see enough about the breadth of things, because actually you're presented by an enormous great list of apprenticeships and actually think, crikey, where do I start? And actually trying to help employers unpick that and see through that and see which ones actually would be right for their business to be really helpful. And universities play a key role in that, is just trying to demystify that and help employers see. And it's not just obviously about the range of degree apprenticeships, it's about all the apprenticeships that feed up into that, and that's having those partnerships. But yeah, lots and lots of range in every occupation you could probably think of. And again, getting that news out about what's new and what's different is an ongoing job, because there's always new roles coming forward, particularly in STEM, where the industry is changing all the time.
Thank you. Yes, I'm really interested in the work that Staffordshire University is doing for apprenticeships, and how the perception may be that teaching in a traditional way and how that works differently for apprenticeships. And I don't think we do teach in a traditional way at Staffordshire University, do we? But perhaps a perception from outside that university is a particular type of learning, and how is that different here at Staffordshire?
Yeah, I think you began to answer it for me, because part of our university strategy talks about being innovative and applied in the learning that we do. And so our students are used to practical approaches to learning there. They're used to working with employers and having opportunities for employers coming in, going out into the workplace. And so adapting for apprentices is not that difficult. Actually, another challenge has been the recognition that the apprenticeship route is part of our core offer now. It's a core product. It's not an add-on to degrees. It is a degree, and it's just another route. And that's been a big challenge, I think, but it's accepted now, and it's a really exciting opportunity for us. And we're going to be developing our apprenticeship hub, which is all about bringing employers, students, academics together, and thinking of new approaches. We're going to have maker spaces and collision spaces for sharing ideas, with a focus on how digital plays a part across all industries. So for us, apprentices is just offering a great opportunity to reflect on how we teach and the kind of experience that students have, and to continue to enhance those opportunities.
Thank you. I think Sian would agree that it's an exciting experience that's very hands-on. Is there anything you want to share with us about how you learn at the university?
Yeah, so we've got the networking labs across the way over there, and we learn all about the networking side of things. That's part of my first assignment I'm working on at the moment. But not just that, you've got your cybersecurity, so there's a big lab where we're learning about how ethical hacking and things like that. It's really interesting. So having them facilities on site where we can come and learn about things and think about implementing the things we've learned in the workplace, it's really good.
And that's the benefit for a small employer, isn't it? That you'll be able to replicate or produce things here that they may not actually see so frequently. So again, the pitch to a small employer is really, really positive in terms of keeping them ahead of the game and keeping them really competitive through keeping on kind of learning, because you can do things that the employer may not be able to do themselves.
I think the other thing that you just really mentioned is that seamless learning from the workplace into the university. It's all one, really. It isn't a case if you come here and you're studying and it's academic and theoretical, and you go into the workplace and you're working. It really is a seamless offer. where students just have that opportunity to reflect outside of the workplace, see other equipment and learn in a slightly different way, but then transfer the learning from here back into the workplace when they go out.
And I think that's one of the things that apprentices often tell me, is that they love the fact that they don't have to use sort of theoretical case studies, you know, from a textbook. They've got real examples that they can get stuck into, and they love learning alongside somebody like Jo, who's really smart and, you know, really good at their job, and they're learning from some of the most talented people in the workforce as well. So there's so many benefits to an apprenticeship.
I think the National Apprenticeship Service and all the Twitter activity this week at #NAW2018 really does showcase the breadth, the depth and the level of opportunities. I think there's another question in the audience, so I'll hand you over to the audience.
Thank you. We've read in the news about the levy, and about actually there's a lot of levy that's not being spent at the moment. And my thoughts are, what are the panel's thoughts about employers using the levy and encouraging them to spend the money now?
Okay. So it's a good question, if I may, and quite relevant at the moment and being asked, because we've seen a drop in apprenticeship starts as well alongside that. The first thing I should say is, obviously, you know, putting a levy on employers is a big decision to make, and that's quite tough for some employers. Our job is to help them to have really good programmes, so they are investing that money wisely and really embedding apprenticeships into their workforce strategies. So it's you know, being spent well. Large businesses have 2 years to spend their levy. We're almost halfway through that now. A lot of the biggest companies are taking time. It's quite simple. They're taking time to plan their programmes, and people like Jenny will know how long that takes to get a really good apprenticeship programme up and running. And we want them to make smart decisions, so they've had to go up to board level, have discussions with the CEO, the financial director, the HR director about how they really, you know, make this part of their workforce planning. So we expected to see large businesses pause, plan good programmes, working with universities to really get it right. We expect to see an uptake in September. A lot of businesses now, not just for degree apprenticeships, are actually thinking about intaking apprentices in the sort of with the school pattern. It makes a lot of sense. So we are expecting, you know, that to sort of pick up again now in September. But it is right that people are taking their time. The other thing I think we should recognise is, and Rebecca spoke earlier about sort of smaller businesses, and obviously they don't pay the levy, but the government can support them by paying 90% of the costs of the training of that apprenticeship, and actually all of it if they're a really small business and they're taking on young people. And we need to do more with small businesses, I think, so for large businesses to support their supply chains as well. So there's still a huge opportunity there, but I've every confidence that we will use every penny of the levy. So watch this space.
And there's also 10% transfer just about to come into
course.
place as well. So large employers will have an opportunity to support their local employers either on a geographical basis or on their business park, or indeed again in their supply chain if they chose to do that. So that's also another flexibility that's imminent.
Thank you. Thanks for that question. I think there's another question down at the front.
I've got community action researcher qualification from university, and I started my organization as well, a woman ethnic minority women's group, that is. My question is there, as a researcher, is there any apprenticeships available?
Ooh.
Take that
Yes,
one.
that is a good
Yes.
point. Yes, not only inside the university, I think, at the moment, isn't there?
I think, at Staffordshire University, we're leading the higher education sector to come together to develop apprenticeships for higher education. So we are looking at a researcher pathway. We've just almost completed the one for our academics, for our teachers. So from September, some lecturers will be apprentice lecturers if they've come in from industry without a teaching qualification. And we absolutely want researcher and practitioners as well to be the next route for development. So it's great to hear that you're interested, and you know, we really will want to bring employers together to help us decide what we want within that area. I think it's also thinking about the occupation, but the breadth of skills that might help within your occupation. So you know, chartered manager, you know, that type of management. There's a senior leader apprenticeship which has just been approved. So it's thinking broadly about some of the occupational specific, but also the broader transferable skills that might help you.
And this is what's so exciting about apprenticeships. They're sort of, it's a live thing, isn't it? And then, yeah, every day we're hearing about new apprenticeships being designed. So
I think also one of the things I really like to see, and I know you're doing this at Stas, is taking a cross-cutting skill but making it specific to a particular sector or a particular group of employers, because there's such an opportunity to do that. So you take something like senior leader completely in the context of your business, so all the examples, all the work that you do is absolutely relevant, but you're still getting that cross-cutting skill, and that's a really exciting opportunity, I think, for university employers to work together.
Just going back to the social mobility, widening participation, STEM agenda, how can we make sure at Staffordshire University, at our further education partners and independent training providers, what can we do to get more girls involved in STEM-related apprenticeships?
I think we've all said it. I think in terms of it's about how it's marketed, how it's communicated, the people that you use to do that marketing and the communication, the role models that are used. I mean, there are, I'm sure there are, you know, young people out there who are on an apprenticeship programme who would take up the opportunity of being a role model, to be able to then use that to go into the schools and talk to them about their case study, you know, their journey, what happened to them when they were at primary school, high school, some of the information, advice and guidance that they've had or not had, you know, and then the journey that they've taken and how they've overcome maybe, you know, parents not particularly wanting to go down the apprenticeship route or not understanding what that apprenticeship route is. And they say, I mean, we've talked about parents, we've talked about pupils, but another hurdle we have is teachers, you know, teachers perhaps also don't have that understanding and appreciation of what an apprenticeship programme is. So I think ultimately it is about the communication, what is out there and how well it is actually you know, told to people and marketed to these young people, but also in a way that they understand it.
And I think teachers is a really important point, and I think because teachers will have gone to university and lots of them go straight into education, and so they may not have that experience of the world of work, and actually it's really difficult to try and explain, you know, apprenticeships to people about all the breadth of, you know, opportunities that are out there. So the best people are the people doing the apprenticeship or employers, but we are doing some work to help teachers because we recognise that that's a huge opportunity. At our apprenticeship awards in January, our apprentice ambassador winner was a teacher, a female teacher who is talking to all her pupils about the opportunities through apprenticeships. We do live broadcasts into schools now. The Department for Education has to pay the levy. And so we have teaching apprentice assistants now in schools, so that's changing people's perceptions. And we're providing them with lots of materials and lessons so that it makes it really easy for them to talk about apprenticeships to pupils. And I should stress all pupils. And I think that's one of the key things, is just making sure that everyone gets all of the options available to them so they can make really smart choices.
I was going to say as well, I think if just back to the older learner, it's overcoming the maths thing, because there is a maths thing. It's just the person that failed O-level maths 3 times. You know, so but can use a spreadsheet. So you know, there is something here about talking about what the job's all about and the problem solving, there's issue diagnosing, and all those, you know, structural skills that you really, really need in a STEM related role, and managing people's worry about trying to do the calculations and positioning the roles differently, because I think that's part of the block, I think, in some cases, certainly again for an older learner.
Thank you. Just before we close, I'd like to ask each panel member if they had a piece of advice to give to either an apprentice, an employer, or a parent, or what would you say? Well, should we start with you, Jo?
No pressure. I would say get out there into your communities and actually go and talk to people and tell them about the options available. Because even when I was at school, I didn't really know. I kind of just fell into my career, which sounds ridiculous now, but I didn't really know what I wanted to do. I didn't really have that guidance. I think it's so important that people know the opportunities available to them.
Sure.
Mine would be making sure work experience is offered in all schools, and make sure the children take the opportunity to do the work experience, because if it wasn't for work experience, I wouldn't be where I am now.
Thank you.
I think from an employer's point of view, and it's easy for me to say it sort of 10 years into a very successful training programme, is that apprentices offer so many benefits to you as a business. and you can also see the benefits that they also get. And when you see these young people work for you 10 years on, and they're now, you know, leading your business forward, it really is a great beneficial programme.
Thank you. Liz.
I think that it is a message that it doesn't matter who you are in the community. There's an opportunity for you. So as a parent, as an employer, or as a child, there's going to be something in apprenticeships for you if it's a route that you want to take. And you will have to look for what you can get out of this exciting opportunity as it grows.
Thank you.
And I think, yeah, whether you're a parent, an individual or an employer, I'd suggest you go on to amazing apprenticeships and just listen to some of the stories of our young apprentice ambassadors. And if that doesn't convince you, I don't know what will.
And I think mine would be a message to everybody too, which is to feel the fear and do it anyway. Because part of the point about skills is it's a hindsight thing. You only realise the benefits when you look back. And actually, if employers understand that and are prepared to take the risks now and then look back, because we all know that once you've had an apprentice, you have more, because the experience of doing that, whatever it's in, it is business changing, is it not only for the individual. So mine is it's a hindsight benefit, but feel the fear and do it anyway.
Thank you. And for me, it would be for employers to get in touch with other employers who have got apprentices to really find out what the benefits were, and to get in touch with your local training provider, your local university, and to look at all the brilliant resources on the National Apprenticeship Service, because there is a lot of information out there, but some information can help you ask the right questions. So I'd like to say thank you to all the panel members, all very inspirational women in their fields and making a huge contribution to apprenticeships and skills development in the Staffordshire and Stoke-on-Trent region, and also across the UK. Thank you very much to all of you.
Thank you.
Thank you.